Hello and welcome to the February 17th, 2023 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting. I'm Laura Ross, the chair of the committee. The CBA has provided the opportunity for the public to participate via the WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending the meeting at the CBA headquarters. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. We currently do not have anyone attending the meeting in person in Sacramento.
What would you want, Mark?
Moderate, do I ask? Okay. If making a comment, you will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. I'll now turn the meeting over to Mr. Parsons to establish a quorum.
Fiona Tam. Laura Ross.
Present.
Sharon Selleck.
Present.
Jeff DeLizer.
Present.
Fausto Hinojosa. And Nick Peterson.
Present.
With that, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. The mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. Okay. We'll now start for the agenda. First, I would like to take public comments for items not on the agenda. Since we don't have any we don't have any visitors in the Sacramento office. Moderator, do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda?
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature in WebEx. Members of the public who are logged in, if you wish to participate, the instructions are on the screen for your reference. Simply click the question mark inside of the square, typically bottom right corner of your WebEx screen, and type the word comment in the text field and make sure it goes to all panelists before you hit send. If you would like to call in, you raise your hand by pressing *3 from your phone. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. With no public comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, my report. So item A, we'd like to approve the minutes of the December 9th, 2022 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Being that there are no observers in the Sacramento, are there any additional comments or discussion from committee members?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, are there any comments from the public?
This is the moderator. I am opening up the Q&A. It is now open. The instructions will be on the screen or are on the screen at this time. If you wish to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square, type comments, and to all panelists. You can also raise your hand, hovering your cursor over your name and clicking on the outline of a hand. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes. I will now call for the vote. Mr. Parsons, please call the roll.
Jeff DeLizer.
Yes.
Nick Peterson.
Yes.
Sharon Selleck.
Yes.
Laura Ross.
Yes.
Fiona Tam. The motion carries.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item 3 on the agenda, we have the report of the California Board of Accountancy Board President, Katrina Salazar, who's present at the meeting today.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair Ross, and good morning, committee members. Thank you so much for letting me join your meeting today. I am your acting liaison representing the Board of Accountancy, and it's wonderful to see you all here. I want to start with saying thank you for volunteering, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have after I share a quick update on some of the board activities. Probably the leading news for this committee is that at the January CBA meeting, the CERT group, which is the consideration of the CPA Experience Requirements Task Force, wrapped up its work. The conclusions were reached at the November and the January meetings, which determined that the California Board of Accountancy's current attest experience is in fact sufficient for the protection of consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with professional standards. And the committee provided some recommendations to the board. And those 3 asks were to create a pathway to allow for accounting firms to obtain qualifying attest experience, the ask for staff to prepare a future agenda item exploring how current regulations may be amended to more thoroughly define reciprocity requirements for attest applicants, and lastly, to address the issue of consumer confusion between CPA licenses with the authority to sign reports on attest engagements versus those without. And so that directive was related more towards communications and outreach and trying to provide education for consumers. So that was a fairly big finding, and that committee has concluded its work. So there will be continued movement at the board level, so keep watching for that. I also reported at the board meeting that the leadership roundtable met. So those were the officers of this year's Board of Accountancy. And some of the priorities are worth highlighting. You may know this is the Board of Accountancy's sunset review prep year. So we anticipate making a presentation in early 2024. So one of the top priorities is to complete that sunset review report this year. Importantly, there's also a project that we're going to go through and review educational requirements for licensure. So, and that's going to break down into considering the educational requirements themselves, looking for efficiencies in transcript reviews, and then finding ways to assist students who are in or are considering entering the pipeline so that they can better understand the requirements and have more confidence in knowing what those educational requirements are and how to meet them. Another priority is working on committee member pipeline and also board pipeline issues. We do have some vacancies in the board as well as committees, so there will be some work with outreach. And so my ask to you here is that if you have friends and colleagues that you think would enjoy working on committees, we'd encourage you to speak with them and encourage them to apply. And lastly, the board will continue expanding on communications and outreach. We have a lot coming up in front of the board with CPA evolution. The exam is scheduled to start changing in 2024. So there's a lot of communication opportunities as our candidates transition to a new uniform CPA exam. So again, the idea is to really help promote information so that we can kind of keep folks interested in the profession and minimize the amount of confusion that they might have in this time of transition. There's also an update on the peer review oversight. So the board approved a letter, actually me to work on drafting a letter to the AICPA, which outlines our board's regulatory language regarding peer review oversight and the right to receive confidential information regarding peer reviews. So one of the asks in that letters is that the AICPA respond within 30 days. We are putting on the March agenda additional conversation about peer review oversight, and we're hoping to include a response from the AICPA in that conversation. So hopefully, if you are not able to listen in or attend the meeting, the next board meeting, look for minutes, et cetera, to keep updated on that. And I'm taking a lot of time here. There was even more stuff that happened. It was a really long meeting. We also approved proposed amendments to Business and Professions Code, Section 5134, which increases various fees. So those of you who have been licensees for a while, remember the fees go up, they go down, they do get adjusted. So we are looking at an increase and also a feature that will allow the board to increase fees based upon the consumer price index at a specified period without having to go back to the legislature for an increase. And so the idea is that there may be a little bit more consistency and people will understand if there could be small, moderate increases rather than these less frequent swings that we have experienced. And finally, our board approved a comment letter back to NASBA regarding our support for NASBA and the AICPA's proposed revisions to the standards of continuing professional education programs and the NASBA fields of study. So you may remember every 2 years that evergreen document is reviewed, and so that did go through our board, and our board supported it. So keep watching for those changes. Again, those standards for education will, once approved, will matter for our licensees. So with really that's a very abbreviated version of a long meeting that happened in January, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But if there are none, of course, I will turn it back over to Chair Ross. Thank you.
Thank you, President Salazar. Are there any comments from the committee members? Seeing none, I'd like to open the comments up to the public. Moderate.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged in and would like to participate, click on the question mark, type comment, send it to all panelists, or you can raise your hand by hovering your cursor over your name in the panelist list and clicking on the outline of a hand. And sorry, that was the participants list, not the panelist list. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Thank you again, President Salazar. And seeing no other comments, we will move on to agenda item 4, the report on peer review oversight committee oversight activities since December 9th, 2022, and our future activities. First, item A, the report on the California Society of Certified Public Accountants report acceptance body meetings and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants peer review board open session meetings. Jeffrey Delizer.
Good morning. I guess that they thought that we just wouldn't be complete unless I had talked at some agenda item in this meeting. I attended a RAB meeting on January the 10th, and a couple of comments. As we've all experienced, the members of the RAB are highly accomplished, very technically savvy, very much in tune with the impact of peer review on the profession as a whole, the firms that they're reviewing, as well as their place in the overall process. A couple of things that were interesting, they had about a dozen reviews. Now that they're holding more frequent RAB meetings, there's fewer reviews. You guys have probably sat in some of these where they went through 50 reviews. But the nice thing about a dozen is it gives them a little bit more time to address some of the issues. They were split even between system and engagement, and most of the reviews were accepted as presented. There were 2 or 3 that were deferred. They also came back to and addressed 7 or 8 follow-up items, which is interesting. Sometimes when we sit in these RAB meetings, we see them get deferred, or we see issues of remediation type activities that are kind of held over for a future. I got to kind of observe them address some of those follow-ups and stuff like that. And so it was a good meeting, met expectations, and that's all on that. Do you want to take comments from any of the other RAB meetings, or just want me to move on? Okay. Okay. I also attended on February 8th the AICPA's peer review board meeting, and this was a telephone call-in, or no, I guess it is Zoom now. But effectively the same thing. Again, if you've attended these meetings, you know that this group is really the most accomplished of all the different RABs from around the U.S. Kind of getting together to advise policy issues at the AICPA level. And so you've got a room full of people that are very well experienced in peer review and its effects. There were a couple of interesting things. One is a note that I made that staff may want to follow up on. They made reference to NASBA's peer review compliance committee meeting. And the compliance committee was one that we used to observe and kind of attend those meetings. It was called like Compliance Assurance Committee, and I don't know if it's the same committee or not. But that committee used to meet, and then they kind of quit meeting, and it kind of fell off the radar. But we may want to look into this NASBA just as an item for staff to look into that and see if that's something that we should observe. The other thing that was of interest to our group particularly is that on the report from state societies, they basically had a response that noting that the peer reviewer pool is shrinking, and there's a sufficiency issue there that's even affecting some administering entities' abilities to fully staff RABs. And so that was a topic for and that's been an issue that we've addressed as well, and so it's one to keep our eye on. Overall, again, meeting met our expectations, completed the checklist, nothing else to really report. Any questions?
Thank you, Member DeLizer. Do we have any comments or discussion from the board? Seeing no comments from the committee, can we open the comments to the public?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions will be on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click on the question mark, type comment, and send it to all panelists. Or you can raise your hand by hovering your cursor over your name in the participants panel. I see no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 4B. It is a written report item only. Report and discussion on the peer review oversight committee oversight of the out-of-state administering entities for the Michigan Society of CPAs and the Connecticut Society of CPAs. Do we have any comments or discussion from the board members on this written report item? Seeing no comments from the committee, could we please open this for public discussion?
This is moderator. The Q&A is open. Instructions are on the screen. If you'd like to participate, click the question mark, type comment, send it to all panelists. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Moving on to agenda item 4C, report on notices posted on the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and National Association of state boards of accountancy's websites regarding changes and updates to the peer review program. This will be given by Member Selleck.
Hello. So, didn't find any updates of relevance to the group from the NASBA website. The AICPA peer review alerts, they did note some meeting dates in 2023 in which they're going to have peer reviewer forums for updates for peer reviewers and recent key developments in the program. So it might be interesting for us to attend those. I've marked down the dates that I might even attend one. And then they're also have updated some courses, but they said those courses were all produced from the 2022 peer review conference, which we observed and reported on in the last meeting. I know that peer review standards for firms are changing from quality control to quality management, where firms are going to have to do a risk assessment on their own practice. So it'll be interesting to see in time what peer review standards may come out to how they want peer reviewers to address how firms are doing their own risk assessment. But I'm sure standards are effective in 2025, so I'm sure that will still be a couple of years out before there's peer review guidance on that. And that is the update.
Thank you, Member Selleck. Do we have any additional comments or discussion from the committee? Seeing none, moderator, may we open this up to public discussion?
This is moderator. The Q&A is open. Instructions will be on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click that question mark, type comment, and send it to all panelists, or raise your hand by hovering your cursor over your name in the participants panel and clicking the outline of a hand. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Agenda item 4D, we're going to do assignment of the future peer review oversight committee oversight roles, responsibilities, activities, and assignments. So for our next open spot, we have a PROC. We want to assign the peer review related updates for the May 2023 PROC meeting. Are there any volunteers?
I could continue to do it unless there's some yearning from someone else that really wants to deal it away.
Yep. Thank you, Member Selleck. Would anyone like to shadow and learn how to also do this with Member Selleck? We'd like to have a second volunteer if possible.
I would do that.
Thank you. We have we need to assign 2 members to do the out-of-state A&E oversight for the Colorado Society of CPAs and Louisiana Society of CPAs. Member Hinosa, who couldn't be here, has already volunteered for one of these. Do we have a volunteer for one to do one of the others?
I'll take the other one.
Okay. Do you have a preference?
Nope.
Okay. Do I need to assign? Okay. All right. Next, we have RAB observations on February 21st at 9 and 2 a.m. Member Hinosa has already asked to be placed on the 2 p.m. one. Do we have a volunteer for the 9 a.m.? Member Tam? Thank you. Then on February 23rd, we also have a 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. RAB. Can I have a volunteer for the 9 a.m.? Oh,
I can do the 2 on the 23rd.
Okay. Okay. That should be enough. Okay, on March 23rd and 24th, we have the actual CBA meeting in Sacramento. I will be attending that, but I believe we'd like a second if we can. No? No? Okay. It can be observed online if anyone wants. You can also observe online. Okay. And then on May 3rd, we have the AICPA peer review open board session meeting. Do I have any volunteers? Okay. Member Tam for May 3rd. That's all we're going to schedule today. Moving on to agenda item 5, we have the report of the licensing chief, Ms. Shell Center.
Thank you. So our favorite item, our annual report. It's our favorite item, right? So as a reminder, the purpose of this item is to provide the PROC the opportunity to review and approve our draft 2022 peer review oversight annual report. The PROC reviewed the draft report at our December 2022 meeting. You all provided feedback and we made those changes. We also made some additional changes beyond those that we discussed at our meeting. We went through, we made some grammar formatting, some changes in language to improve clarity and readability. We also, as we spoke last time, we talked a little bit about the peer reviewer statistics that were in the report and how we were working with AICPA with the assistance of CalCPA to get some different data for that. And so on page 24 in section 9, titled Statistical Monitoring and Reporting on California Peer Review Statistics, graph 3, titled Number of Reviews Performed by Firms in 2022, was added. I believe there was also an addition of an appendix. That's correct? That has some similar information. And then table 14 was removed. You might recall that at our last meeting in December, we were a little confused about table 14. It attempted to provide us some similar information as what you now see in the table that we added. We also went and made some changes in the 2022 message from the chair and the conclusion and observation sections. And that was due to the PROC's inability to perform the 2022 annual site visit. You will note in the report that it does acknowledge that the annual site visit was canceled by the executive officer of the board. And that is why you were unable to perform that normal visit. So at this time, I'm happy to go through and take any additional edits, or if we don't have any substantial edits to discuss, we can, you could move to approve the 2022 PROC annual report and delegate authority to Chair Ross to make any necessary edits prior to presentation of the report at the board at its March 2023 meeting. So I will go ahead, I'll hand it back over to Chair Ross. I'm always happy to go through it page by page like we did in December, but let's see if that's needed before we do that.
Thank you.
You can tell, Sharon, I'm looking at you.
I have 2 or 3 questions, and maybe I'll do 2. On the graph that was added, graph 3, was the intention to have, there's like gaps in the number of reviews? Is that based on the firms? Because like the first column is 1 through 25, then 25 to 50, and then it jumps 75 to 100, and same thing on the last one? Was that just to meet?
Sorry, let me get there.
Sorry, and page 22.
That obviously is an error. Ms. Benedict, do you remember if we had any that were between 50 and 76, 50 and 75?
No, that's the way the data was given to us from CalCPA, so we'll probably just need to confirm that it's 0.
That it's 0, yeah. So all of the data that is displayed in that graph is in the appendix. So I'm looking through it to see if I see any in that range. And it doesn't look like there are any. So we either, maybe we just footnote it to say there are none, might be easier than to try and display a 0 in that type of
or expand.
Graph?
Could you just change the range like to 51 to 100?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How do you want them to be displayed?
Just, you could go 51 to 100 and then 101 to 175 or something.
Okay, so you want us to look at just changing it. That's fine. We can look at that. We'll do,
Does that look at this?
no, you're right. It seems odd the way it is. And so I think with the motion that we have proposed, we would be able to work with Chair Ross to modify it. It's the same exact data. It's just modifying it to not look so awkward. Ms. Sugg, did you have another question?
And again, it was just on the addition, the Appendix A. Did we want to comment somewhere in the report about that concentration? I noticed the top two firms were 27%. So that's a lot for two firms to be doing a quarter of the peer reviews. If we wanted to note that where we discussed about the concern with the pool, to throw in that there's a very large concentration.
So we did report that there is a concentration that is on the top of page 23, but we don't have it in any conclusion or recommendation section. But I believe at the top of page 23, the data illustrates the concentration of reviews being primarily done by a few firms, with a large number of firms doing very few peer reviews. So we can rephrase that, or if you think it needs to be elsewhere.
See what the group thinks, but I caught my eye that just two firms are doing a quarter, that we wanted to at least call that out in addition.
Would you like us to add a sentence there, or maybe break it apart so we are specifically talking about the concentration with two firms, and then make a statement about how there's also a very large number of firms doing relatively few? Do we not agree with that statement?
I would agree, because we all want to focus on the concentration, right? So I think by calling it out, right, just, like how many or what's the percentage of peer reviews done by really little firms, then, we might have potential, I guess, concerns.
Because if the concern is the reviewer population and one of those two firms stops doing it, that's a chunk.
Right, and I think that when we talked last time about the peer reviewer, we kind of talked about the different concerns that we might have and what we might want to include in our oversight. And obviously, you can tell that we were not able to get data and information related to all of our concerns. This particular data set illustrates trying to capture the information from a firm level. So what would happen if one of those firms received a failed peer review, right? And that particular concern is addressed in this data set. You all had a different concern, which was really about technical expertise in certain areas and whether or not there is a sufficiency in our peer reviewer population for some of those specifics. And that doesn't look at the firm as much as it looks at individual peer reviewers. That data we were unable to obtain at this time, and we can look forward to our next annual report in getting that. And I believe your proposed recommendation in this report that we continue to look at the peer review population would address us continuing to look at it. So that is what we were trying to do. I think that I saw some uneasy looks on individual faces. So I think what I'm hearing is we should change the sentence on the top of page 22 to only acknowledge the fact that we have a couple peer review firms that are doing a very large percentage relative to the other firms, and leave it at that. Could I see some heads nodding, or I'm looking down there.
I just want to be careful how we word it. That's all I'm concerned about.
Okay, so I'm happy to work with Chair Ross on that to make sure that we are delicate in the language that we use. In no way do we mean to suggest that either of those firms has a current risk that we have identified, right? It is just the fact that there are only two. It is in no way relative to who they are and what work they perform. And I think that might be what was causing the angst. Am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think that Chair Ross and I have heard that. We can make that adjustment. Is it okay if I ask Chair Ross if there are any other comments, changes or concerns? If any of you have non-substantive edits, grammar typos that you might have found, we're happy to take those, but we would need those pretty much now because we are getting this document prepared for the March board meeting. So if you could get those to us probably by Wednesday, is that okay? Looking at, so I think that Mr. Parsons is not making eye contact because he didn't like me giving you all that much time. But I think we could live with that. If you don't have comments, let us know so we're not waiting on you. But if you do, please have those to us by Wednesday. We can make it work.
Okay. So can we have to make a motion? Yep. Okay. Can I have a member make a motion, please, to approve the draft of the 2022 Peer Review Oversight Committee report? Oh, wait. Hang on.
Can you please add this?
Okay. The staff recommends that the PROC approve the 2022 PROC annual report and delegate authority to me to make any necessary edits prior to the presentation of the report to the CBA meeting at its March 2023 meeting. Okay. Now, could I have someone make a motion, please? Member Peterson, was that a hand? Oh, wait, what else?
I'll move that we approve the report and delegate authority for non-substantive edits to the chair.
Thank you, Member DeLizer. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Peterson. Are there any additional comments or discussion before we go from the committee members, before we go to the public for comments? Seeing none here, moderator, could we please open this to comment from members of the public?
Yes, this is a moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click the question mark inside of the square, type comment in the text field, and make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking the send button. If you prefer to raise your hand, hover your cursor over your name in the participants panel and click on the outline of the hand that will appear. At this time, I have no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. I will now call for the vote. Mr. Parsons, please call the roll.
Laura Ross.
Yes.
Jeffrey DeLizer.
Yes.
Fiona Tam.
Yes.
Nick Peterson.
Yes.
And Sharon Selleck.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, closing business. Item A, agenda items for future peer review oversight committee meetings. Do we have any? Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none, do we need a motion? Okay. Seeing none, item 7, we're going to adjourn. Okay. Just thank you for attending, and we are adjourned.